Well, good morning and welcome to Getting Started with Adobe XD. I'm your host, Jesse Showalter, and it is the morning time for me, which means I'm highly caffeinated. And I hope wherever you are made happy by some sort of libation, whether it be a morning or evening libation. We have people jumping in the chat. Jennifer Poole's here. Tim Mobess is moderating for us. Let's see. Cindy says hello. Margarita's saying hello. Tell me where you're coming from, where you're joining from. This stream is all about learning Adobe XD, the very basics. Maybe you've never opened it up before. Maybe you have opened it up, but you're thinking, I need some of those. I need to get over that hump of that learning curve. It's all new to me. Maybe you are a pro and you're looking for some workflow tips or some things that you didn't know. Maybe I can offer that to you. I'm a designer and a developer. Like I said, my name is Jesse Showalter, and I'm gonna be here with you for the next hour and a half or so in my library. No, I'm just kidding. This isn't really my library. It's just a sweet image that I got on Adobe stock. And the reason that I'm in a library is because today we're going to be designing a little bit of a library application, maybe an audiobook application, something you can listen to books, read books, explore books. We'll design a handful of screens. We're going to do some prototyping, some basic design work, and learn all the functionality of Adobe XD as we're going. By the time you're done with this video, you should be able to use Adobe XD to create pretty much anything you want to. You'll have those foundational skills to start designing everything that you're imagining in that amazing creative brain of yours. Chavez from Florida saying hello. Mark is from the UK in London. Anika's joining from Finland. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, you should jump over to Behance. Find the link that's somewhere there in the YouTubes and jump over to Behance Live so you can actually engage in this live chat, because that's what it's all about. I like talking to people. Throughout this stream, I'm going to be asking you questions, figuring out what you like, what you don't like. Maybe you can help guide and direct some of the design that I'm doing. That'll be pretty fun. I like to interact. People are coming from Cape Town, South Africa, from German. I can't even say that, Sean Kozel, but it sounds like a lovely place. I'm just gonna have a sip of my coffee here. Okay, great. Well, like I said, that's what we're doing. There's a lot of new updates that have come out in the maybe past 3 to 5 months of Adobe XD. It's just getting better and better. It's getting insane. I mean, not only can you design awesome stuff, not only is it still highly integrated with the rest of the Adobe Creative Cloud, but it also it's kind of like it's taken on a life of its own. It's becoming this really amazing, awesome thing where you can design and you can prototype and you can share and you can collaborate and you can hand off things to developers. We have regular transitions and animations. We have states and component states, which we're going to talk about today. All sorts of really cool stuff. So Mark says he's intrigued by XD. He's a Figma and Principal user usually. This might blow your mind, Mark. Welcome to the stream. We might just kill some of your brain cells with how excited you are. Let's see. Hugo says hello from Venezuela. He's a Venezuelan in Denmark. Ooh, how eclectic. I love it. All right. Well, hey, I'll tell you what, before we go too far, keep saying hello. I like talking to you guys, but let's jump over to my desktop here. Let's talk about some amazing resources for XD. So after this stream is done, because I got just today with you. I know, sad, like tears. Like give me a little emoji, sad face with a tear, because I only get to spend today with you. I'd love to be with you all the time. I would love that. But I can't. It's just for today. Karima says hello from Afghanistan with a smile. That's always good. Maybe not smile, maybe not tears, maybe smiles. That's a good thing. But there's some awesome resources online for you to learn more about Adobe XD after this stream's over. If this piques your interest, if this does blow your mind, then you can head over to Let's XD. This is mainly curated by our good friend Howard Pinsky, Senior XD Evangelist over at Adobe. Talented guy, amazing guy, lover of the Poppins font, and also saying weird sounds like beep boop bop. And he has created some really amazing content here on this site for you. You can learn everything you need to know about designing and prototyping. He's also got other people who bring content onto this site, so you can learn everything about Adobe XD, what's new, find some cool freebies like some UI kits and downloadable stuff. Oh, so good. I've used some of that stuff. And if that, yeah, Tim just dropped a link in the chat over at letsxd.com. And I have a YouTube channel where I talk about design and development. And I also have some videos about, well, that's an ad, but I also have some videos about Adobe XD. So maybe you'll want to check that out as well. But those are some great resources, and there's lots of other good stuff out there. But today we should get you going. All right. So Stephen Craig Smith says, "What's up, Jesse from Dallas? Not too far away from me." That's right. I'm in Austin, Texas, where the summer has fully come. And it's light outside until about 9 o'clock at night, which is kind of weird and cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and you'll just see let's start from the very basics, right? I'm on the desktop of my computer. Adobe XD is available for both Mac and PC. So if you have either one of those, this is gonna be for you. It's pretty rad. And so I'm gonna try to say Command or Control as much as possible today. If I mess up, I'm sorry. I'm a PC user and also a Mac user, so I'll do my best. But I'm gonna head down to my dock and open up Adobe XD, and you get your little launch screen. This is the screen that I use whenever I launch Adobe XD. You can jump around and look right here in the left-hand column for different plugins. We're gonna talk about some plugins today, I promise you that. You can go to your cloud documents. That's right, you can save stuff not only to computer, but to the cloud. You can see things that are shared with you and links that you create. We're going to talk about all of this, but I like this little screen right here. It tells me what recent projects I've been working on, and it gives me some handy screen sizes, phones, tablets, websites, custom sizes. I can drop these down and pick one that I want, but a lot of times I'll just start like this. I'll just click that little mobile if I'm doing a mobile project, and Adobe XD is going to go ahead and open up a mobile project for me. And look at that amazing design we've already started working on. Isn't it good? I love it. All right. Austin says, "Good morning from Northeast Florida, new to XD, excited to learn." You should be, Austin, because learning is fundamental. Learning is fun. But what's cool about learning is, yes, the learning, but it's the things that you can do and make after you're done with the learning. I always like getting over that hump of learning a tool so that I stop thinking about the hammer, the tool, so to speak, and then I just start looking at what I can build. My wife and I are actually renovating. We bought an old hoopty like RV, like a trailer, and we are renovating it and fixing it up with our own bare hands, and it's gonna be really cool. So, but it's like, once you get done learning what to do with the saw, then you start just imagining all the cool things you can make with the saw. So that's really cool. That's what we're doing this morning. All right, Karen says she's a learning designer from Belgium. Very little XD experience. You're gonna like this. You're gonna like this, Karen. You're gonna like this, Austin. So here's what I just did. Like when I created my new file, I got an empty XD file with an artboard. Okay, so XD is an artboard system, which is the radness. It's the sweetness. Because what this means is, I don't mean to skip ahead, but if I do some sort of rad design like this amazing ellipse, this red ellipse on my screen, and I really like that, I'm not anchored into just this one kind of design. I can just hold Alt and drag over a new version, and now I have multiple of the same design working. And so this is good for two reasons. Number one, if I have an idea and maybe I want to just like mess with this idea a little bit, and then I can just start riffing on that idea. Oh, maybe I like it like this, or maybe I like it like that, and the possibilities are endless. A lot of times my artboards start looking like this at the end of a project because I've just been having fun riffing on ideas. So that's number one, is just the idea creation aspect of artboards, which is so good. Number two, the other great thing about artboards is it allows you to create entire applications, entire websites, right? Without turning layers on or going into pages and all sorts of weird stuff. I just have this page of my application, and then maybe over here I have page 2 that has some sort of different design for my application. And so I can have entire applications, and we'll get to it, but then we're gonna prototype in between all of these different artboards. And we can actually prototype it on a screen. We can send it to people. They can play with it, test it, and it feels like a real application. That's why artboard systems are fantastic, okay? Sinu says, "Hi from London, graphic design student, starting to learn some UI and UX." Well, you're in the right place, my friend. Let's do this thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and just press Command Save. I'm gonna save this to my desktop, and I'm gonna call this Bookshelf, okay? So let's just call it Bookshelf, our little application we're gonna make. Let's get rid of this ugly little red circle. So just Command or Control S to save your project either to the cloud or onto your desktop. Now, we have our artboards here. What else is going on in this interface? Because whenever you open up an interface, you're like, oh, another program to learn another interface. This is gonna be really similar if you've used any other Adobe product or any other design platform ever. It's very simple. Let me show you around a little bit. Over on first we have our artboards in the middle. You can always grab those by the name here and move those artboards around. You can hold down spacebar and you can navigate around this infinite canvas. I can zoom in and zoom out by pressing the Command or Control minus and plus buttons. So that's really great. Over on the left-hand side, you have all your tools. You have all your shapes and your pen tool to make Bezier curves and things, typography, new artboards, and our zoom tool, okay? Down at the bottom, we're gonna go into these, but we're currently on the layers panel. So just like any other design tool, we can see every layer that's in our design. For instance, if we go back to our artboard and create a little rectangle here we have a little layer inside of our artboard called rectangle, okay? If we have multiple artboards, you're gonna see those multiple artboards represented over in our layers panel. All right, so this is our layers panel. This is where we see all the layers and all the artboards. If we go down back to these little three icons here, up above that is we have something called our assets panel. Our assets panel is going to allow us to do the amazing thing of start to create reusable elements and items. For instance, if I really like a color, maybe I like this very golden-y color, and I don't like this border, and I want to use this golden-y color over and over and over, I could come over into my assets panel and I could save that color, and now I have the hex, like the hex value saved. I have that color. I could rename it as golden, and then any other element that I want, I can just apply my color to it. Now what's really cool is later on, if I want to change this, I can right click on it and edit it. I can change this to another color. It's gonna change it across the entirety of my project. So I don't have to go and change every single button or every single shape. I just change it once, bam. So now we're gonna start creating really smart reusable design systems and components that we can use assets in our assets panel. Just like that, the same thing as colors, we have character styles, so our typography we're gonna use, and you have actual components, the elements like buttons and icons and things you wanna use over and over and over. We have all of those in our assets panel, so that's super cool. And then down below that, in our little lower panel, we have plugins. Plugins are an amazing part of XD. There's a plugin for anything you can imagine. Want to make a map? You got a plugin for that. Want some icons? Got a plugin for that. Do you need stock photography? Bam, I'm gonna hook you up with a plugin for that. It's really nice. So Monir is in the house saying hello. Jennifer Poole says, have they made the Mac versus Windows versions more aligned? I use both, actually. I use both Mac and PC versions of Adobe XD to answer your question, Jennifer. I like both. I think they're pretty close, to be honest. There are some small differentiations very small, I mean tiny, in the actual interface, but the core of how XD works, it's almost seamless across the board. And if you're used to using it on one platform, you jump over to another, the learning curve is so small, you'll be done in like 10 minutes. You'll be like, I'm right up and running. I'm off and away. It feels great. So hope that answers your question. But these are our plugins. We're going to be engaging with a lot of plugins today. So just keep that in mind. Hope everyone's doing all right. Some people are dropping some fun little emojis. Let's do this. If you're in the chat right now, drop me your favorite emoji that represents how you're feeling today. I'm a big fan of emojis. I use emojis and GIFs almost completely to communicate to friends while texting and emailing. So you send me your favorite emoji that tells me how you're doing right now. This will be fun. I'll guess what it means. We'll see if we can communicate that way. Okay, so that is our toolbar. That's our different panels that we can navigate around down here. We can also, if you'll see up in the top left-hand corner, you will have your different areas like that you can work in. So right now we're in our design area. Karen just dropped me a unicorn inside of the chat. I love it. Annie dropped me a little face mask. That's true. Sean, I can't tell what that is. Is that a fire truck? Is that a purse? I can't see it from here. I'm sorry. If it's not a fire truck or a purse, I apologize. Okay. Laura dropped a magnifying glass, which I think means she's studying. She's really paying attention. Austin Browning is wearing some glasses on his emoji, which I think means he's having fun in the stream. That's what I think. Jennifer just dropped me a couple of emojis, which means she's an eclectic person that feels happy and silly and kind of like a kitty cat. Is that what that means? I'm not really sure. I'm loving these. Oh, Hugo just dropped a little hand and a brain inside of it, which means he's working and he's thinking. I like this. This is good. Let's keep the emoji communication going, everybody. But right now we are in our design area of our program, right? If we wanted to do some prototyping, we could just click right here and we move over to the prototyping. You'll see there's very little is going to happen. Here's the things that are going to happen when I click over to prototyping. Number one, I'm going to lose all the tools on my left-hand side. for good reason. And number two, our inspector panel over here is going to change. It's going to change from the design kind of like things that it needs to do over to the prototyping things, okay? We're gonna talk about prototyping later, but it's really, really easy. But this is where you're gonna do all of your prototyping stuff. And then we have the share tab as well. It's gonna allow us to share links out to people, let them prototype it, play with it on the web or on their device. Pretty cool. So that's what's happening. Let's see, lots of really cool emojis happening there. Almost done with a little tour of the interface. Up here at the top, we have the name of our project and the ability to hit our little arrow and resave it and change the name to it, all that kind of stuff. And then over on the right-hand side, you have some controls for viewing our prototype like that. We have a little prototype viewing mode there, as well as sharing, looking at it on a device. But really the inspector panel is like where all the magic happens. I click on any item. Let's say I put some text on the screen right here. I'm gonna just bump that up so you can see it. Well, when I click on my square, I'm gonna get things that are contextual to what I've actually touched and what I'm playing with on the canvas or on my artboard. So right now I'm messing with the shape. I get fill colors and different objects or different like properties for that. And then when I click on text, I'm gonna get all the contextual kind of elements and controls for typography and text, okay? So this is your inspector panel. It changes with what you are interacting with. That is the interface. How simple is that? Not too bad. Let's get started. Let's start designing some stuff, okay? Let's design, I'm gonna skip by like the onboarding stuff because that stuff's, I don't wanna do that. I wanna get straight to like some interface stuff, shall we? So in my mind, this is our home screen. I'm just gonna double click on my artboard and rename it home screen, okay? I'm gonna zoom in and let me know if you have questions. Oh, Stephen Craig Smith says, how are you magnifying features? That's actually just something I do for screencasts and tutorials. It's inside of my accessibility preferences on my MacBook Pro that allows me just to zoom in so you can see things really clearly in certain areas. This is just me doing it for the screencast. Okay, but that's a great question. I actually just learned that from Howard Pinsky a week or two ago. So he's a wealth of knowledge. Let's zoom in and let's start laying out a little bit. Now, I'm gonna hit R for rectangle, or you could have came over to your tool panel over here, zoom in, Stephen Craig Smith, and you can see the short code or the hotkey, the quick key for any command if you hover over that tool. R for rectangle, or you could just tap right there. I'm gonna go ahead and hit draw a little rectangle on the screen. Now remember, we're making a little bookshelf, okay? And I'm gonna leave a little bit of a gap up here on the top of my artboard because in the iOS kind of like design guidelines, you wanna have space on the top and on the bottom for a status bar, those little things on phones. At the bottom, since we don't have buttons in it or a home button anymore, it's kind of the pull-up tabs. So the guidelines say we need to leave a little bit of space. That's iOS specific. And so if you're getting into interface design, one thing you really want to dive into is the Apple interface guidelines. And then if you're going to design for Android, all of their design guidelines as well, because they're very specific. They have different looks to them. So that's a thing. So I tell you what, let's do this. Let's turn our border off by just clicking here in our inspector panel. Let's fill this with a really ugly color just so we can see it on our screen for now. But we're gonna pull this guy down. I'm gonna zoom in so you can see some elements of my little rectangle. This is gonna be super basic for those of you that know XD. For those of you that don't, check this out. You'll see a bunch of little dots all around. So for instance, I see some dots here, I see some dots over there. What do all of these dots do? Well, if I grab the outside dots, I can reshape my rectangle, right? Okay, not so amazing. But if I grab the inside dots and start pulling, I can create border radiuses for my shape, just like that. Okay, you'll notice as I'm doing it, watch the inspector panel right down here. This is my border radius area, okay? So you'll see it actually change. I'm gonna sneeze here in a second, guaranteed. But you're gonna see the border radius change down there. Here it comes. Well, that's good. It cleared the sinuses out. It felt nice. Sorry, that's my allergies probably coming into full gear. But we can create our border radiuses like this, or you can dictate them here. You can also, if I hold down the Option key, I can just change the border radius of one of the edges instead of all of the edges. You'll notice that the moment that I do this, watch my inspector panel down here, it's gonna go from all of the edges being equal to 4 different edges. We see that? And I can customize the edges. So if I zoom in, now you'll see we're not on the all like the same radius for all corners, we're different radius for each corner. And I have my top left, top right, bottom left. So it kind of just goes in a circle that way. Okay. Monir says, bless you, Jesse. Thank you. I love when I sneeze on a live stream and people are so polite. Oh, that's so great. My own friends don't say bless you when I sneeze sometimes. So you guys are awesome. I appreciate you. All right, so let's go back and let's just add a little bit of border radius. I'm just gonna do it really soft. I don't want something intense. I'm just gonna go 5, okay? And so now we have a little border radius right there. And this is gonna be kind of like the recent books that we've read. Let's do that, okay? So what I wanna do is I want to, now let's talk a little bit about a feature in XD called Repeat Grid. But before we do that, I want to start lining things up. I want to let you know I'm very guilty of not lining things up. If you've done UI design, UX design, you've heard people talk about grids and layouts and columns. What is that whole deal about? Well, XD is going to help you out. I'm going to click on the actual artboard itself by hitting the name here or by hitting the name of the artboard over there in the layers panel. And if I head down into my properties panel, I'm going to hit the little grid. Now I can either do layout or I can do a square grid like so. Let's stick with a really simple layout today, okay? And I'm going to do a 4-column layout. Let's do that. But you can change this, right? You can turn this into a 5-column or a 6-column. Maybe 6-column would be fun. Maybe that'd be a cool thing to do. But I'm gonna go with a 4-column. Maybe 6. Okay, I'm just playing with things. I'm having fun now. Okay, so let's move our shape. And what's cool is there's smart kind of snapping inside of Adobe XD. So you notice as I get close to a grid, it's gonna snap onto that little grid line. That's really helpful. Okay, so use smart grids and snapping when you can to help yourself out. Also though, if you don't like this idea of the grids, what you can also do is if you hover over the left-hand side of, let's just zoom in so you can see it. If you hover over the left-hand side of the artboard itself, you're gonna get some actual smart guidelines that can jump out. So I can just drag one of those out and pop that on my edge here. That's about 35 pixels away from the edge, 36 pixels away from the edge. And then I can do one from the top as well. And you can drag multiples of these down, okay? And these will stay there even if you turn the your layout off. Okay, so now I have something 36 pixels from that edge. Why don't we turn our layout back on just like that, and we'll just drag this one over to match. So now that's on. What I actually love about the grids and guidelines inside of XD is that they tell you the distance away from each side. A lot of other programs will just give you the distance from left to right, like 200 and something pixels. This knows you're trying to create boundaries for yourself to work in, okay? So, all right. Anybody have any questions so far? Let me know in the chat. Ask your questions, answer. And even, I'll tell you what, even if you don't have a question about XD, maybe it's a question about design in general. I would love to answer it. I'd love to chat with you guys, okay? You don't have to, for this, you don't have to just speak in emoji. You can ask real questions if you want, okay? So let's just resize our little book, okay, to fit right in there. F. Smitic says, nice guides. I know, right? Now, what's the point of guides? Obviously, it is to keep you lined up, keep everything lined up constantly throughout your application and create a sense of consistency. It's very important in UI design. Sinu says, how did you get rid of the grid column to appear? Well, 2 ways. You can make sure that your artboard is highlighted there, and you can turn on and off the grid layout like this, okay? Or there is a hotkey, which I always forget, which is hide the layout grid, Command or Control Shift apostrophe like this to turn it on or off. So that's a quick way to get to it as well. You can also turn on or off these smart guides and grids. And I always forget how to do that one. Let's bring up our help again. If you ever have a question on how to do something, always go to that little help section. Hide my layout grids. Boom, like that. Oh, no, that's not the right one. Wow, I forget, but we'll talk about that later. We're gonna keep these on for now. Okay, so let's get a little bit of work done here. I have a shape and I want to fill it with a book. That's really what I want to do here, okay? And what's really cool is I'm just going to drag XD over. Okay, you can see my file that's been saved on my desktop. I have a series of books that I went out and found, books that I've read, like to read, or want to read, some of my favorites. And I can drag one of those in. So how about we do this? Let's drag this cover in. Now you'll notice, let's just zoom in here, so you can see when I take my book here, this image, just a JPEG. I'm gonna drag it into XD. I could drag it out here on the canvas and I get the book and I can work with it. It's gonna be constrained to the shape of the image itself, but we want things to be smart, okay? And I want things to be scalable, which means I wanna be able to use them in a plethora of different ways, okay? So that means I'm gonna use Adobe XD's smart masking features by grabbing a JPEG and dropping it on top of my shape. I will have immediately masked that item. Got me? Mask that item into the shape. Now I can actually resize my shape and it will kind of contain or cover my shape inside in a very, very smart way. What's also really cool about this is now a mask, and if I double click on it, I can actually mess with the image inside and mask things out just like you would in Photoshop or any other program in the Creative Suite, okay? So this is a really cool way, a really quick way to grab multiples. Now, I'm gonna take this up a notch. I'm gonna teach you an amazing feature in XD called Repeat Grid. It's gonna save you tons of time, okay? I have this book, and what I really want to do is I really want lots more books kind of stacked up over here to the right. I want like a horizontal scroll feature happening here. Do we see that? So we're gonna kind of lead them off the page, but that's a lot of work to constantly grab each one, duplicate them. XD is gonna make this really, really simple for us. All we're gonna do is we're going to grab our item and we're gonna press Command or Control R for repeat grid, Command and Control R. And I get these little handles on the sides that allow me to repeat in any direction. I can repeat vertically or I can repeat horizontally. I can just drag out a bunch of these. Okay, so why don't we drag out a couple? And what's really cool, if that wasn't cool enough, just saved you a bunch of time, I got two more things that'll make you go, pow, 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 pow. This is gonna be amazing. You can now look at the gutters or the space in between each of the elements in your repeat grid, and you can manipulate those all at one time. So when I say consistency, I mean consistency, y'all. This is, we're talking about working smarter and not harder and keeping that consistency legitimate as we work. Now, that was number one, blow your mind. That was number two, blow your mind with the repeat grid and the consistency of manipulating that grid. Blow your mind number three is coming right now. Ready? I'm going to take all of these other books. I'm going to take a handful of books, like maybe 5 or 6 books, these images that I have, and I'm going to drag them into my repeat grid, and bam, it's going to populate my repeat grid with all of the different items automatically. Okay. Now, if you later on start to stretch your grid out more, it remembers all the images that you sourced in your repeat grid, and it continues to fill them until it's hit the limit of everything you've offered to it, and it will start repeating over the image that's in the first slot. Now, if you have more, look, I have more books. Let's grab all the things, all of the books, drag all of them in here. Oh, we're gonna get even more ability to continue to drag this thing out before we see anything repeat. Oh my gosh. How awesome is that? Come on, or can we just, little golf clap for Adobe XD for making life so easy. This is gonna be so awesome, okay? All right, so we have our books in there, okay? And now we can even later on, we're gonna prototype this so we can kind of swipe this thing left to right and actually prototype it. It's gonna be really, really fun. But before we get too far, okay, I wanna go into my repeat grid, and I want to, because everything now that I change or add to this repeat grid, if I make this element taller, it's gonna make it taller, okay? If I make this wider, it's gonna make everything wider. If I change the border radius to this, it's gonna change the border radius to everything, okay? So let's go back to a normal border radius, okay? So it's gonna change it in one place, it's gonna change it everywhere. That's the smartness of Adobe XD, all right? That being said, why don't we go inside of our repeat grid? Why don't we add our first piece of text, okay? So this is gonna be book name, okay? And we don't want that to actually be inside of our thing. So let's get that out of there. Sorry, 1 second. Let's grab right there and drop our book name. Let's choose a Howard Pinsky favorite. He got me hooked on it. I can't stop using Poppins, doggone it. Every time I try to use a different font, to me, because I've been watching so much Howard Pinsky, nothing's as good. It just doesn't look the same, okay? So let's make this real small. And I'm thinking, why don't we actually spread our repeat grid out just a little bit like that? And we'll take this and let's do like a percentage of the book read, okay? So this is like our most read books or our recently read books. And we'll choose a nice light little font like this. And maybe we'll bump up the size of that guy and we'll use our typography tools to maybe pick a little bit of a thicker font size, okay? So that'll be really cool. We're just gonna create this little layout and then we're gonna recreate it, okay? We got some questions in the chat. What's the difference between UX designer, visual designer, and product designer? Okay, wow, that's a great question. Dave says, what's up, Jesse? I missed you. I missed you too, Dave. Okay, but Monir, what's the difference? Let me answer it like this. A UX designer is somebody who's specifically focused on the user experience. So they don't necessarily, if they don't want to or don't have to, really focus on visual design, color, typography. They're more concerned with the flow of an application or a website. They're planning the content and the layout, and they're trying to get people to the places they want to go. Good experience, okay? So that's what a UX designer would do. They would spend a lot of time working out user personas and doing note card kind of like sessions to figure out what's the most important thing here, okay? Number two, visual designer, somebody who designs things visually, aesthetics, color, typography, imagery, art direction, a lot of the stuff that we're going to get into in a little bit. And then a product designer is somebody who's thinking about the holistic process of any specific product. So it could be a website, it could be an application, but they're thinking about kind of everything from the start to the end of the cycle. They're kind of the Swiss Army knife of the design world, so to speak, okay? So product designer can be more than just digital, but it could be a physical product, but a lot of times when we refer to it is a digital product. So with that being said, I hope to answer your question. There's a lot of overlap between those. What's a graphic designer? What's a web designer? What's a UI designer? It's a lot of overlap. So what you want to focus on is making things really, really like usable and simple and awesome. That's kind of what you want to focus on. Let that be your guide. And then wherever you end up with a plaque on your desk, doesn't really matter. Okay, let's see. When adding to the repeat grid, does it automatically put them in alphabetical order? I don't believe that it does. I actually don't know that. I'm not sure. So maybe somebody who's moderating can actually tell us, okay? Yeah, okay. And then Sinu says, does XD have autosave? I don't think it does. You have to save as you go. But I'm kind of a save command or control S nerd. I do that all the time, so don't worry about that. Okay, so let's create a little rectangle here. I'm just gonna draw a rectangle. This is gonna be like a little progress bar, I think. Let's do something like that. Let's take away this harsh border and let's pick just like a nice, I think like a purple or something. Like, let's pick a nice chill. I think reading should be really calm. I want this to be like a nice chill, calm kind of application. So let's make that a little thinner. I'm gonna zoom way in on my progress bar. I am the kind of person that will spend tons of time on a progress bar on a little tiny element like this. So I just created a secondary rectangle and put it above. And now the back one, I'm gonna fill with a really muted gray, just so we get that little bit of like, you can see the progression there, okay? Let's try to get it to something like 70%. We're gonna group the two together. Let's call this progress bar, okay? And then we will right align this text, and I wanna align this with the very edge of my element there. And then I'm gonna move it back down near my progress bar. I'm gonna grab both. I'm gonna use my alignment tools in the upper right-hand corner and just make sure everything's aligned. So this is horizontally aligned. If I press vertical, it would do that. We don't necessarily want that right now. We just want it to be horizontally aligned. So now let's group these together and call this the progress, progress stat, okay? I'm a huge organizing my layers kind of person. I don't know, are you? Do you like to organize your layers? Let me know. Greg says, if it's a cloud document, I notice it does auto save it occasionally, but to be sure, better save it manually. I think you're very, very correct on that, Greg. So cloud documents are awesome. It's gonna do a little bit of the work for you. You can always access them. Even if you're not on your machine, you can access them on somebody else's by logging into the Creative Cloud. So that's pretty great. Also, if you log into Creative Cloud, check this out. You open up your Creative Cloud application on either your Mac or your PC. You can have access to all your stuff, right? So here's all my apps, but then also I have like all of my work. So here's all my cloud documents, but here's also all my libraries, like all the images that I download like from Adobe Stock or create libraries. We'll talk about that. But if you create a library in any application, it's accessible to you. So let's say I was working over in Illustrator, created a little library to use in a project. for a brand, maybe a bookshelf application like this, and then I bring it over, it's available. It's just available because it's in Creative Cloud. You don't even have to bring it, quote unquote, bring it over, okay? So here's what I want to do. I want to introduce you to something called components, okay? Let's do some component work on this little guy right here. This is our progress stat. What is a component? Like we said earlier, it's a reusable element that you can just constantly use and change over and over and over. So let's go to our components panel and let's do a little bit of work here. I am going to delete this color that we had saved in there, the blue. I'm going to take this color and this color. I'm selecting the gray and the purple of my bar here. I'm going to enter those in, okay? Just so I can reuse those over and over and over. Then I have my little character style here. I'm using Poppins. This is a little 8 right here. I'm going to hit character style and I'm going to call this my stat number, okay? So that's really easy to rename them and see them. I also like to switch things up. You can either look at them in this list format or this little grid. I kind of like the grid format like this, but it's up to you, whichever one you prefer. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take this whole element, okay? And we are going to press Command or Control K to create a component out of it, okay? It's going to adopt the name of the layer. So this is the progress stat. And when I roll over, it tells me there's one instance of this in my project, okay? What does that mean? What's the difference between, what is an instance? Okay, well, what's cool about progress stats is I can drag out more of them and drag out more of them. And if I change it in one place, like let's say I no longer want it to be this color, but I want it to be this color, it's gonna change it everywhere, okay? And when I roll back over my progress stat, it's gonna tell me I now have 3 instances of that. You see that? That's really, really cool. Now, you'll notice that when I clicked on this progress bar and changed the color, it changed everywhere. But what happens if I click on this progress bar and try to change the color? It doesn't change it. Why doesn't it change it everywhere? Well, because there's a difference between an instance and a master component, okay? And here's what you'll notice. If I hover over, if I select this progress bar up here, you'll see a filled diamond in the top left corner. But if I hover or if I select this one, you'll see an empty diamond, okay? That means this is the master component and this is an instance. So when you mess with an instance, if I change the color of an instance, I'm actually going to do what's called override that instance, and it's okay, right? So again, if I change the master, it's going to change everywhere. But if I override, it only changes that instance. So now this can be 20%, and this one can be 100%. And we're overriding them while still keeping some editable kind of features, right? So if I come back into my master and I say I really want this background to be black, I'm still sweeping, almost like if you're doing web development, there's something called CSS, cascading style sheets. I'm gonna cascade the style down across all of the instances of it, and then still leave a little bit of tweaking and changing to it with each of those individual instances. So that's instances and components. Oh my gosh, it's so amazing. Let's see, Jennifer Poole says, you showed me something I didn't know with the Your Work tab. I know, isn't that great? It opens up a whole realm of possibility. Okay, let's see, cool, good morning everyone. Everyone's doing pretty good. We're just cruising along with the coffee and such. We have about 1 hour left and we're gonna start cranking things out a little faster now that we're learning some of these basics. Okay, now that we have this kind of basic idea of a component learned, what I really want to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to start something over so you can see it. I'm going to ungroup this grid. Okay, now I just have individual kind of elements that I can move around, and you can do that. You can do that after you're done creating a grid if you want to. You can totally do that. I'm going to take some of my favorite ones. Let's see. Yeah, actually, let's just take this one up here. So now that I'm going to redo that grid, knowing that we have this possibility of creating reusable elements. Okay, so now what I want to do is I like this book. I like the shape. I like that it's filled with an image. Command or Control K. I've made a component out of it, and let's rename that component to be book. Okay, so we're just going to bring it right back into place, and again, you can do the same thing. You can repeat grid this out. You can have these, but why don't we grab them? I'm going to do something interesting now called a nested component. If my book is a component, remember, I can bring out another instance of my book. I could I could fill it with a new image. That's me overriding it. But if I come into my master and I change it, it changes everywhere. Same thing with my progress stat down here. These are great to have them individually, but what if I grab both of them together and I press Command or Control K? I've now made a component out of other components. I've nested the components into each other, which means I can come over here and change. Let's call this book stat, okay? Now what happens though? Because things are nested, they are going to continue to cascade over each other. For instance, again, here's my master component of this. Let's say I drag one of these out and I decide that I want my book to be a little further away from my stat. It's going to change everywhere. But what happens if I change my master stat bar? Does it still change everywhere? It does. Oh my goodness. We're now creating, if you've ever heard this term design system, you're creating the very beginnings of a design system. Reusable components. Some people might call it more of a pattern library. This is a design pattern that I'm creating. A book with a stat bar underneath it. And now I can reuse that pattern over and over and over, right? So what's really cool about this is I'm gonna do something that you might freak out about. Don't freak out about it. My master component here, I'm gonna delete it off the canvas. It's okay, they're still over here. They're still over here. And if you right click on any individual instance of a component or nested component, you can always hit edit the master component and it will bring it out onto the artboard or the canvas for you. So you can do your editing here without having the actual master there, which can be kind of nice, okay? So with that being said, I know Greg said component inception. We are 5 layers deep of inception, my friend, and Leo DiCaprio is waiting at the bottom. I'm just kidding. He's not really. Okay. What else? Any other good questions going on? All right. Okay. So now that we've created that, I'm going to redo that process of repeat gridding. I'm going to grab my instance, this nested component, Command or Control R. I'm going to repeat grid out and have everything kind of together, don't I? Okay, now let's do that thing we did before where I come in, I'm gonna grab some of my favorite books. Hitchhikers, Hobbit, Little Women, Narnia. Let's grab all those, drop those in there. Oh, and because it's a component, I can't do it individually. That's okay, that's okay. Let's just do it individually. I think that's fine. I'm gonna grab Alchemist and drop it in there. I'm gonna drop, let's do, I'm just nitpicking about my favorite books, okay? Let's do, Narnia. It's one of my favorite books, okay? Let's grab this one. Let's do The Lean Startup. That's a good book. Whoops. Let's bring it into view so we can actually see it. Let's do Habits. That's a really, really good book. Then let's do, what's another one that we really, really love? Ooh, what's your favorite book? Ooh, that's a good one. In the chat, tell me what your favorite book is. I would love to know. These are some of my favorite books, okay? Sinu says it's really intuitive, really helpful tips. Thank you, I appreciate it. I'm glad this is helpful. It's a lot of fun, isn't it? Okay, let's see. So now we have this element, and we can come in and we can alter, edit each one of them. So let's change this instance, and we can just override this and say that's like 40%. Let's say this one's really close because we really love C.S. Lewis, so that's 90%. And this one is still 70%. And we've barely read any of Harry Potter. What a travesty if you haven't read a lot of Harry Potter. Don't watch the movies, read the books, okay? So now we've overridden all of those. Pretty cool. I think what this actually needs is a little bit of typography, don't you think? So let's actually drop this down a little bit. I'm gonna drag a new kind of smart guide there. And I'm gonna drag my, I'm gonna hit text here. I'm gonna write recent books. Let's do that. Recent books, and let's just give that the stat styling. Okay, so you can see if I change it to something else like this, and then I come back and I hit stat styling, it's going to override and just take me to where I want it to be. But I can use that stat styling, can't I, as the basis for like a little bit of a typographic scale. Let's create a little typographic scale right now, a modular system. If you don't know what that is, it's a reusable system for typography sizes. How do we make sense out of typography? How's it supposed to look? Well, let's take a look at it. 8 pixels is way too small for standard legible text, I would say. And so why don't we jump this up to something like 16 for our kind of normal reading size? Medium maybe is a little bit too heavy. Let's go to regular. This should be right here. This 16 pixel regular size should kind of be our standard for reading. What I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to my inspector panel. I'm actually going to full screen. I don't know why I'm off of my full screen here. I'm going to change from having a point text over to what's called area text. Point text, here's what it does. It allows me to have a piece of text and then size it up or down. It also allows me to, as I keep on typing, it's going to grow with what I'm typing. Area text instead is going to allow me to draw an area that I want my typography, to live in, and then it will fill as I fill that typography, okay? So let's say we like this as our standard reading size. I like that too, okay? I'm gonna come over here and press plus in my character style, and I'm just gonna say body copy. Okay, that's my body copy size. I've created a new character style. But now I want kind of like a sub headline, okay? A little trick, watch this. I'm gonna write sub headline right here. And I still have this large area text box. If I double click on this little bottom right here, double click, it's gonna actually just suck it up or expand or contract to meet the size of the typography that's inside. It's called fit text. It's really, really cool. It's a great little feature. But I want this to be, I want some dynamic contrast between my sub headline and my body copy here, don't I? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over, maybe some of you didn't know this, you can do math inside of Adobe XD, it's really fun. I'm gonna hit 16 times 2, that's an asterisk 2, right? I'm gonna multiply it, press enter, and boom, we get a little headline size. So why don't we make this, just for now, point text so we can kind of size it as we go. I want to also though, I probably want to drop this to a different weight, right? Let's go one weight size bigger, up to medium, so there's a little bit of contrast there. And I think actually we want this to be legible. We want to move to like kind of an off black color. So why don't we save this color and make sure that our body copy is actually, let's edit that and let's use, let's do this. Come in here to our fill. I'm gonna save a little swatch over here that I can use as well. So I'm gonna hit my body copy, I'm gonna edit it, and I wanna make sure that I'm using this color right there. Okay, so now my body copy has changed a little bit. I want this one to be using the same size. So why don't we hit our little swatch right there? So far, so good. We're gonna save this as a sub headline. Sub headline, okay? And then let's do a master headline, like just a normal headline that's gonna be even bigger than that. We're gonna come 32 times 2 again. Whoa, I just did something way too big. Times 2, and there's a massive headline. Now we can tweak this, right? Maybe it's a little too big, and bring it down and go up to semi-bold, and now you have your headline. So let's just save that right there and say headline. And now you've created a little bit of like a typographic scale that you can use, okay? So why don't we get rid of our headline for now? I'm gonna take our sub headline and put it up here, and I'm just gonna put, recent books right there, okay? We're gonna leave some of this down here. Everything's looking pretty good so far. I'm just gonna anchor that, the baseline of my text right there, okay? Okay, Jennifer Poole says, isn't there some sort of technique where you multiply by the Fibonacci number? Yeah, that's called the golden ratio that we use in design, 1.618. You can do it by that, and it's supposed to be a really beautiful thing. I didn't want to throw a crazy decimal number out there, but Jennifer Poole, you have socked it to me. That is a good number. You can do it by either, you can do it either by the golden ratio, or you can do it by just by 2 if you want. You can play around with different typographic scales and have lots of fun. So far, so good. Okay, so we have this little guy right here. And that's a great question, by the way, Jennifer Poole. Thanks for asking that. Here's our recent books. And then we probably want to do a little sub headline right down here. So let's shrink this guy. It just looks a little bit bigger than its brother, doesn't it? This is 16. This is 22. I'm also being a little bit loose and playful, right, with my scale. It doesn't need to necessarily be so crazy. So let's call this little sub headline. These are really casual terms for stuff like this, and that's okay. So I want to now, I'm gonna reuse a similar component that I had, like my book. Boom, I'm gonna bring my book out right there. how much spacing do we have between there and there? All right, we want to get some consistency here. So let's do about 5 pixels of spacing there. And next, let's actually shrink our book down, okay? Again, it's an instance, so we can override it. Looks pretty cool. All right, and now we're gonna build out a little bit of a new nested component based off of some other components that we already have. For instance, let's take our little, let's just do body copy right here, okay? So I'm gonna go like this and hit body copy. And what is this book? This book is Little Women. Actually, let's get a new book, one that we don't have really featured anywhere else, excuse me. How about The Great Gatsby? Let's do that. Let's drag that one in there. We'll call this The Great Gatsby. That looks pretty cool like that. Let's give this a little bit more weight, shall we? Because it's a little small. So by giving it a little bit of weight, we're giving it a little bit of contrast. It's a little bit of readability there. So we got The Great Gatsby. Let's do another piece of typography underneath it. Let's use our stat there. This can kind of become a little sub-headline thing as well. So The Great Gatsby was by, F. Scott Fitzgerald. So let's write that in there. F. Scott Fitzgerald. I probably spelled that wrong, but for the case of interface design, you guys forgive me, right? Okay, I think you do. All right, and let's see. Jerry Hibb says, hey, everyone, never used XD before, but ready to learn. I'm excited. Thanks for joining us, Jerry. I'm excited that you're learning and that you're pumped up, okay? Let's see. Understandable avoiding. Yep, everyone's just kind of chatting, talking, having a good time inside of the live chat. If you're there, have some fun with us, okay? So we have our book name, we have our author there. Let's reuse another one of our components. Let's bring our stat item here. But let's mess with it a little bit, okay? Let's bring this all the way out to the edge, okay? And we're just lengthening our stat bar. And we did that because it's an instance, it's editable, it's lots of fun. We can do something like this. And why don't we do, I don't know, like, let's do, well, can we do like a couple little small stats inside of it? So I'm gonna take a rectangle and I'm gonna create a new item here, okay? I'm gonna fill this with like, let's get our purple color. Let's do something that's nice and light though, like maybe a little pink tab. Maybe, yeah, I think I like maybe pink or blue. Actually, let's go green. Maybe, I like green. Let's do that. Okay, so now I'm just nitpicking. Let's make like some sort of little tab in here that has like some sort of stat for us, shall we? So I'm gonna bring this down. I'm gonna zoom in on my project so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm gonna press Command or Control right bracket, and this is just moving things up. You'll see over here in my layers panel, it's moving things around in my layers panel. I use Command or Control bracket a lot to do that. Cool. Vins says, hey, I wanted to start doing UI. I'd love to make motion graphics for games. I'm not sure how it works. You make the design in Illustrator, then animate it in After Effects, and then make it interactive in XD. Wow, that's a big question. A lot of things you want to do there. You want to start doing UI design. You could definitely do that using XD or Illustrator. You want to make motion graphics. You could definitely do that in After Effects and do some fun stuff there. I'm going to bring the whole thing to life. It kind of depends on how you want to bring it to life. You want to make an application or something, you might have to hand it off to a developer, maybe learn a little bit of development. You want to create a prototype using those things. You could do that in XD, bring the whole thing together. A lot of people will create designs in XD elements, bring them into After Effects, and then do that really fun in-depth animation stuff there. You can also, we're going to get to here in just 2 seconds, you can do some fun animating inside of Adobe XD with a little auto animate stuff that we're going to talk about. So let's do this. Let's go amount of pages, okay? 1,000 pages. I don't actually know how many pages The Great Gatsby is. It's probably less than that. Let's do 1,000 pages there. Let's group that together. And you know what? Let's call this a stat bubble like this. And I'm going to create a component out of it. Why? So I can create multiple of them and maybe change the color on 1 or 2 of them. And then this one over here will be 5 stars. Okay. Now that we have this instance, I think what we should actually do is bring a little icon inside of it. There's a couple ways you can get icons. Number one, you can go out and find icons on the web. Number two, if you have some sort of icon like library, like I have one called Icon Jar. There's a lot of them out there. You can use that one. You could also use a plugin. Why don't we do that now? Because there's a great plugin, and I have to look for it. Where did it go? Icons for design. Okay, I'm gonna type the word star in here, do a little search, and I'm just gonna tap star, and it gives me a little star icon. So you could do that as well, using a plugin to get yourself an icon. Or if I wanted to create a simple enough icon, I could create it myself, right? I could use my pen tool, but I'm gonna use the polygon tool. It looks like the little triangle up here. I'm gonna drag one out. And what's cool about the polygon tool is it's literally polygons, right? So we can dictate how much we want there. We can round the corners a little bit, and we can just change the bend and bow of the internals of it. So let's create a little star our own selves and not use somebody else's, right? I think we need to bow a little, just draw it in a little bit more. Okay. Yeah, let's let it be nice and pointed like that. I like a nice star icon in the morning, don't you? Okay, let's bring that down. It's filled. So there we go. So now we have, let's make sure this is inside of the instance. Now it moves around. Okay, so you can see I have the same little instance there called stat bubble, but I just changed like what's inside of it. How great is that? Okay. All right, so now we have all those components together. Why don't we grab them all? Some of them are already established components, like our book and our little stat thing and our other little bubbles, and we're just gonna make a new stat out of that. And we're gonna say book layout 1. That's kind of a bad generic name for that, but and we have to change this to like all books, okay? That way we can do another little repeat grid action here, Command or Control R, drag it down, boop, just like so. Change the spacing here maybe to something like that. And then we can come in and replace some of the imagery that's inside of there. Why don't we do that? Boom, boom, and the Hobbit down here. I'm gonna drag this up, and now now that we've done all this, we've done some really great design work, I think, and created a lot of fun reusable components. I think we want to do just a little bit of animating on this screen before we move on, okay? A little bit of prototyping, shall we? Let's see, let's move over this way. I'm gonna grip my layers panel. You can see I have my home screen. There's a couple ways we can do this. Okay, so way number one that we can do this, and what we probably should have at the bottom here is we should probably have like a little navigation, shouldn't we? Okay, so let's take that off. Let's do a little navigation like this, make sure it's down at the very bottom. It's gonna be a little taller because we probably have to have a little pull tab because of iOS, don't we? Let's fill it with a really, really light gray. Let's bring in our edges like so. And let's make our little pull tab like that. That's not perfect. You'd want to hit the human interface guidelines from Apple to know exactly how it should look. But let's put a little drop shadow on our navigation. I'm going to hit my Y value, which is my vertical value. And you have to be really careful when you're making shadows. I think this is especially important for new designers. If you're doing interface design and you're kind of new to it, a lot of times people do this, right? They do something like this, because the point of a drop shadow is to separate objects, to create dimensionality, just for that contrast and differentiation. But that is just so intense that it starts to look unnatural and funky to the eye. So you really want to make sure you take things down a little bit. You want to bring the opacity of it way down. I would stay under 8% on most shadows. And then you can use this little option here, property called the blur option, just to spread it out a little bit more. See, that's even still a little bit too intense. I'm gonna take it down to about 4%. And then what I really should have is maybe a little bit of, just a little bit of a line. Take the shadow off. Let's do a very light gray line here. That's probably what I should have. If I'm not getting enough separation, I should consider just a little bit of a line there. And I'm going to change the height to about 1 pixel, so it's very, very small. Okay, and I don't have a lot of time, so let's put different icons in this. So let's just find a couple icons right here. Let's do a book icon. Let's do an account icon. Let's do something like this. And then maybe let's do one more that's like, there's no more books, book. How about, search. That'd be a good one. Let's do a little search icon, okay? So you could search for new books, manage your account, and see your own books. That could be some cool functionality for this application. Let's zoom out, bring our icons all the way down here. Let's build a little navigation really quickly, and I'll tell you a little something about a cool feature called component states, all right, which is really, really fun. Let's center everything. Just make sure everything's centered. And these are really, really harsh in this color, aren't they? So why don't we grab our icons here, icon, and icon, and why don't we use that same light gray color? Let's add that to our swatches. And we want the border to be that same one as well. So now we have these nice light gray kind of icons down here. I'm gonna grab the whole thing down here, all of my icons and my 2 rectangles and my little pull tab deal. I'm gonna group it together. I'm gonna call it navigation, okay? And we want we want an active state, don't we? Okay, so why don't we do this? Why don't we grab this and come back over to our component side? Why don't we fill it with purple so we can tell that that is indeed our active state. And we're gonna want to fill that with the purple as well. So the whole thing, ooh, maybe no border on this guy? Yeah, no border. No need for a border. So far, so good. Annie G said, what an Easter egg. I don't know what that means. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Annie. I don't have any details. If you think I'm offering you things, I don't know if I am. Okay. I always love watching Howard because he's part of the actual XD team. I'm not. But he has little Easter eggs about things that are coming. He'll always tease you. He'll be like cool things coming. And that just, ooh, I hate surprises. So I love him for it, but I'm also really bad at it. Okay, here we go. Let's shrink down this little pull tab and then let's make shall we? Let's make a component out of it. Here's our navigation. I'm gonna introduce you to a new thing called component states. Okay, so this is a really easy navigation. And if we wanted to mix up our navigation and have the different states, instead of, this is what you can do. If you had a different screen and you wanted to navigate or animate to that screen, you could come over to this one and then fill it with the color and change the active state to these and change it back. And you're gonna animate back and forth between the artboards. You're gonna do that. And we're gonna do a little bit of that also in a second. But let's talk about one of the newest features, which is component states, which allows us to literally just on the same artboard have different states for this component and the elements inside of it. And it feels so real. So we are currently, if you notice, we're on our master component. We know that again because of our little filled diamond up there. And we are going to look up in the right-hand side and you can see it says our component, it's our master, and we have a default state right here. Do we see that? Well, we want to create a new state to this. And we do that by pressing the little plus button. We're gonna hit new state when that comes up. And we're gonna say account. I misspelled that, but let's hit account right there. And now what we can do is we can come in here and we can make those changes we wanted to make. So why don't we fill that like so, take the border off of it, come back over to this icon, and why don't we take this icon, which is that purple, which keep down here, take that back to the gray, okay? So now we have account and we have the default state. Let's create another one. We'll press plus, it's gonna create a new state, and we'll put search down here. And we're just gonna come over to our search icon since we have it selected, right? It's selected with the little light blue background. We know it's selected and we're working on that state. We're gonna change the border on this one to the purple. We'll come over here and change this fill to the gray. And now we have 3 separate states. And you're going, Jesse, what does that mean? What does that matter? Well, here's where it matters, okay? We're gonna come over and go back to our default state. You can see if I switch between them, I'm getting just a little bit of activity in between those, right? And that's pretty cool. It's pretty nice so far. Let's come over to our prototype tab and do a little bit of our very first prototyping. I'm going to select the area in which I want to prototype, right? Do I want the entire navigation to be my tap state? You can see that I could click right there and make that be the case, but I don't want that. I want this little icon over here. I want to navigate. If I tap on account, I want to go to that state of the component. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on it, just like so. And I'm going to say on tap, I want you to auto animate. And now it's going to tell me to choose a state or a layer. Okay. So I want to choose a state or a layer. I want to go to the account state. We're going to choose an easing type. Let's do ease in, out. And let's do it in 3 seconds. Okay. And then I also want to click right here and say, hey, on tap, auto animate, go to the search state. We're doing all of this within one of our states, aren't we? Well, within the default state. Great. So now these are hooked up. I should be able to press play on my prototype and click on it, and it goes right over there to it, okay? But we lose any other interactivity on the other icons because those have their own states. We need to prototype those up as well. Let's go over to account. Let's click on this guy, auto animate back to the default state. And again, we'll do this, auto animate over to the search state. Then we will go over to our search state that we have there, and we want to just do the same things. You'll notice as I prototype, XD remembers my last selection and keeps the majority of those options or properties within that prototyping selection there. So it's always a tap, it's always an auto animate, so on and so forth. I'm going to auto just do this one last prototype, and we're going to go to the account, and then we're going to flip back over to our default state. Let's prototype this. Now we should be able to click around in between our navigation. How nice is that? That feels really, really good, okay? All right, so far, so good. We're having a lot of fun here, okay? Let's see. People are just saying, Tim Mobest says, hey, everybody, please keep it on topic. Let's talk about XD. Let's talk about stuff. You guys are having interesting and fun conversations, and we love it. But you guys are awesome. You guys are silly. Oh, my goodness. I'm happy that you guys are making friends. That's what I'm happy. Beulah says, what time did I start? We started about an hour ago. So that means we have about 20 minutes left, actually. Not too much more time, okay? And I'm only one screen in. Yikes. Let's do, now that you've seen component state animation, why don't we do a little bit of artboard animation or prototyping, okay? So from artboard to artboard. I'm gonna go over here and we'll call this home screen scrolled. Okay, so let's do home screen scrolled. I'm literally just gonna take my elements and I'm gonna move them over to the edge like that. Let's do that. And now we're gonna prototype between these two artboards back and forth, okay? So we did a tap and a component state. Let's do a drag over to an artboard. I'm just showing you the different options that you have inside of XD. You get to choose which one's the right one for you, which is cool. So we're gonna take inside of our prototype tab, I'm gonna spread these apart so you can see them just a little bit. I'm gonna select this whole area, right? I wanna be able to drag anywhere on this bad boy. And I'm gonna drag this, instead of tapping this time, the little handle over to my other artboard. And I'm gonna say on drag, see how I changed the trigger type over here in my interaction. On drag, I wanna auto animate over to scrolled. And why don't we try a different easing type like snap, okay? And then we want to just do the same thing back. On drag, we want to auto animate back to the home screen. See, it remembered our settings like snap. Now what this is doing with drag triggers is you're actually animating the positions in between things. And you're going to see, let's just do another one so you can see this really quickly. What if I do another artboard down here? See how rad that artboard system is? It's pretty great. And we might actually, before we do this, we want to just understand that I want to be able to drag this up without these things getting messy. Do you see that? So why don't we really quickly just draw a rectangle in here. This is going to be a lot of fun, actually. I'm going to dig this. So let's do a border. We're going to fill it not with a solid color, but with a linear gradient going from white to white. But one of those whites, the bottom one, is going to be transparent like this. And we'll just manipulate our gradient. Actually, we got to go the other way. So why don't we just grab this whole thing and spin it around. Okay, let's manipulate that gradient again. We want it to fill pretty hardcore, right up to there maybe. Okay, you're asking me, what am I doing? I'm just gonna move this behind and make sure that the bottom vertical scrolling one is underneath it. That way when it goes up, We got to do a little bit more work here, okay? So we might actually need to just make sure that this comes really far down here. That way, as it scrolls up, it goes behind, okay? Now these elements need to be all in one here. So as it scrolls up, I want to lose it. Whoa, where did you go? Here we go. Scroll up and it disappears underneath, right? You see that? This one probably needs to be a little bit further out like that, because we just want it to disappear behind those books. You could do a solid, like just a hard line if you want, but that's just what I'm gonna do. Now, I'm actually gonna show you a quick problem, a problem that I've just created for myself that you should be aware of when you're prototyping. Prototyping in Adobe XD, if you wanna do simple transitions, like instead of auto animating over, like when we drag this, we could just tap something and have screen slide. So instead of doing auto animate, you could just do normal transitions and they will slide left, slide right. But if you want things to auto animate, they need to be very similar. Here's what I mean, two things. Number one, the objects need to be the same, okay? And they need to be named the same. Here's what I mean by that. I'm gonna draw two little artboards for you. This is like auto animate, like 101. Let's go back to our design tab. Let's draw a couple of artboards really quickly. Okay, I'm gonna drag a rectangle onto the screen. So this is for all of you out there that really wanna master the auto animate action. I have a rectangle over here, and over here, I'm gonna change that rectangle to be smaller and shaped like a diamond, okay? They're both named Rectangle 8 on each one of these artboards, and it'd be really easy for me to prototype on tap to auto animate over to this one, and then on tap, auto animate back over to that one. And when we press play, we get this great little auto animate, okay? Now the problem becomes when they're not the same thing. This is a rectangle and this is a rectangle. If I draw an ellipse over here and I try to name it the same thing, Rectangle 8, okay, I want this square to transform into this ellipse. It's not gonna work. And here, it's just gonna do a fade for me. And here's why, because they're not the same things. One's a rectangle, one's an ellipse. Adobe XD knows that. Sorry, I just hit my microphone. Adobe XD knows that and wants you to make smart decisions. So there's a few options. Always use the same things, always name them the same things. Or if they're shapes like this, you could just turn it into a path. So we could go here to object, convert to path, or press Command or Control 8. And now both of these are a path named the same thing. So let's call this path 3. Rename this one path 3, and we can press play and we should be able to see it transform. See that? So name them the same things, have them be the same things. The reason the problem I created for myself, I did it on purpose, was so that you could see I started rearranging the order of the layer stack and moving things around. Oh, that gets funky really, really quick. All of a sudden, this artboard doesn't have this background layer. It's gonna look glitchy. So I'm just gonna go ahead and recreate it now. Drag it over now that we have everything we need in it. I'm gonna drag this one down and drag this state kind of up so we can search all of our books. Okay, with that being said, we'll go to a prototype. We'll say on drag, auto animate to there with a snap. And we'll say this down to our bottom one, on drag, auto animate there with a snap. We wanna go back obviously, so let's go there, auto animate with a snap, and scroll back up, auto animate it with a snap. So let's go and see our prototype really quickly. We should be able to scroll this way and scroll that way just by dragging it over. We can drag this one up, drag it down, and the whole time, because this is a component with component states, we should be able to flip back and forth between the two. We had a little bit of glitch there, probably because I did something wrong. That's okay. We'll go back and fix that. But now look, this is like really usable, really fun, really cool. And you could show this prototype to somebody and they would absolutely dig it, absolutely love it, okay? Okay, Joseph says he likes the fade. Tim Mobes, would this also work if the background isn't just white? It could. You could do lots of different things. There's the sky is the limit, but we only have about 10 minutes left in this stream, so I gotta get cranking and get some other work done, folks, because I've just been having such a good time. Jennifer says, see, that is where it gets complex. I think there's a way, but it would just need multiple objects. Yeah, you can do it in component states. You could do it with multiple artboards and objects. Totally a possibility. But like I said, we are coming up on the end of my stream. So let's just do one more screen here and see if we can do like a fun animation that goes there. So I'm just gonna drag a new version of this screen out, okay? And I'm going to call this book focus. Okay, so book focus is going to have all the elements of the book, and we could do a simple push if we want to, like a slide transition kind of thing, but we're gonna want to just do a little bit more design stuff here. So let's just bring all of these elements out. Okay, well first let's show you, let's show a little transition stuff that could happen here. Okay, so first thing that you could do is elements could transition out like so. Okay, so you can't see those. And let's see. This could also go away up there like that. And we could, it's gonna be a little bit hard because we made these into a repeat grid, but let's say this wasn't in a repeat grid. Let's just take it out of the grid really quick. Ungroup the grid, and ungroup the grid, okay? Cool. Whoa. I think we need to space our artboards out a little bit more, have a little bit of working room, don't you think? I think that's probably good. Ungroup the grid. Okay, there still should be a group of books though, shouldn't they? They should. Okay, ungroup the grid, but grab all of these books, make sure they're grouped together. So sometimes repeat grid is the answer, sometimes it's not the answer. It just depends on what you know you're gonna do, right? So let's group these together, okay? So when elements are grouped together and they're longer than the artboard and they hang off of the artboard, that's okay, they stay visible. If they're not grouped and elements fall off the artboard, they're gonna just leave the artboard altogether and leave your prototype, and that's not necessarily what you want. So you might have to play it a little bit smart and group objects together so that they can extend and hang off the artboard like that. Okay, cool. So let's do this. We want to go over to this little women book. So what we want to do is we want to take all of these other books, boom, 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 and we want to fade those out. And we want to take our little women book cover like this. Let's make it really big and let's move it down into the middle like this, okay? And let's just see that prototype from now on, like just right in this moment. So let's go prototype. And let's say we tap on it and it auto animates over to book focus with a snap 0.3 seconds, okay? I wish I had time to get into it, but you can also add extra actions like sounds and different things, but it's pretty fun, okay? And then let's just, for funsies, let's just click on this thing and we'll go back the same way. So again, we should be able to tap on this and, ooh, whoops, I clicked out of it. We should be able to tap on this and see all of our things animate out, and the book kind of pops in there, okay? And again, so much of this takes finesse, right? I really want to see things like move around. So if I had more time and could plan it better, I would see this whole thing expand and I'd want to see like a fun color. So we're gonna go away from the prototyping right now, back to designing, and let's just draw a little bit of a fun shape behind it. Let's do that, okay, shall we? And let's fill it. Let's be contextual to what's on the screen. Why don't we get this out of the way? That'll be good. Book stats. So we're just gonna go, just for fun, let's delete all these out of the way. And I'm gonna delete that as well. So I'm just gonna have the book like featured in the middle here. And we'd probably want some sort of icons up there like like an arrow. Oh my goodness, I'm typing wrong here. Like an arrow, like a really simple little arrow left. So let's do an arrow left here. Cool. Let's just take that and fill it with white. All right, pretty good. And just take it down so it's a little less intense, okay? Then, I don't know what happened to our book cover while we were doing all this. What did happen to it? Is it still there? Oh, I must have deleted it. I don't know how I did that. Let's bring it back over. Okay, feature our book right here in the middle. Fun stuff. And let's bring our icon down. Just bump it up a little bit, okay? And make sure things are lined up. Everything seems to be lining up all right. Let's take the border off this. I just want it to be this nice color. Okay, and then we can take like the name and the title of the book. So why don't we let's go back to our assets panel and let's take something like this and pop it in. Now remember, this has a style that it's using, but we can override that style. So why don't we just make it white? That could be nice. We'll call this Little Women. I actually own this book. It's sitting on my bookshelf right behind me. It's a great classic if you haven't read it. Okay. Louise May Alcott, great book. Here we go. So let's do this. Let's go down to stat. Again, we'll override that and make it white. L-O-U-I, May Alcott, something like that. Ooh, I am spelling it horribly. You'll get to know this about me. I'm real bad at spelling and grammar. I'm just going to take the opacity down. There's a little bit of contrast between the author and the title. Something like that. And then why don't we bring this book size down a little bit and bring this whole layout up. Something like that. And then we can bring these elements in, I think, which would be fun. Maybe this guy, and this guy. I'm just grabbing elements off of other artboards. Something like this. So we just want to line those up. And why don't we make this even longer? I'm just going to delete that portion and come into my instance and just stretch it all the way. Now, I'm not really a big fan of the purple on there, so why don't we just contextualize it to the book itself, okay? And that's the percentage that you've read. And then down here, we could do something like a little bit of a text box. So why don't we we'll just lay out a text box inside, lining things up as we go. I'm gonna use another plugin that I really dig. Let's go back down to our plugins. This one's called Content Generator, okay? So we're gonna hit Content Generator. I'm gonna grab a paragraph. Woo! I drew a text box and I didn't fill that text box with anything, which is a problem. And we don't want it to be white, we want it to be black so we can see it. Now, that was my problem. Let me zoom in so we can see our text box here. And we want this to be like 16, don't we? Something's happening with my computer right now. There we go, 16. Let's go back to Content Generator, grab our paragraph. That was the problem. It didn't have anything working there. So we'll do something like that. Let's grab one of these titles, pop that in, and let's check the time. We are almost done, folks. Let's do a description here. Let's bump up this little headline to semi-bold. Okay, and let's bring that down like that. Actually, let's bring the title down and make our body copy really, really legible. And so only a few screens today. Let's see, but a lot of fun. Let's answer some of these questions before we get out of here, okay? It says, how much, let's see, who is that asked that? Adham says, how much do you consider the human interface guidelines in your app design? When I'm doing real app design, yeah, I have to consider it a lot because it's very easy for your application to get rejected from submission in the App Store if it doesn't follow those human interface guidelines from Apple. Same thing with Android. If you try to put something in the Apple Store that looks way too Android, sorry, I got a little distracted. If you do things that look too Android on the App Store, they're gonna reject it. So I think it's very important. I think an iOS app should look like an iOS app. I think an Apple or an Android app should look like an Android app. So I hope that answers your question. Good to know that, Corey says. I would like to see how that would work, turning it into code. I'm learning code as well, just the basics. Oh, you had some questions being answered in the chat by some other folks. That's great. You can develop something here and then you can share it out. Like for instance, if I wanted to share this, this work that we're working on right now, I could go up to the share tab, and that's probably a good way to end our stream today by just looking at my design. Let's say I really, really like it and I want to create a new link for people to see. So why don't we create a new link? We're going to call it Bookshelf. And what purpose is it? Is it a design review? Do I want to pass this off for development? Let's choose that one. It's got some pretty cool stuff in it. And then we want to create that link. So Adobe XD is going to go out and create a shareable link for me that I can offer to anybody for those specific purposes. Here in this specific design mode that we are offering, it's going to give us something called the inspector mode, which is going to allow developers to see the code, to grab and download assets, to measure things in kind of a live like inspection development environment, which is really, really cool. So it's just finishing right there, creating my link, and it's going to offer it to me in just, 1 second. But we're pretty much at the end of our stream for today. Let's click on that link and let's see what we got going on here. Okay. We have now our design, and we could navigate around. If everything was prototyped up correctly, we would be able to, just like that, like navigate around inside of this thing. But you can also go over to our little design inspect mode here, and you can get all the assets. You can see the viewport size and the screen details, all the colors that are used, right? If I click on, or if I roll over any one color, it highlights it on the screen, which is really, really cool. Then I see all the character styles, have all the interactions that are kind of like mapped out for me and where those are taking place. Really, really cool stuff. And your developer can just simply grab this and download that asset. Oh, so cool. Instead of having to create design documents and all that kind of stuff, this is a really, really cool place to be. So with that being said, we're going to jump back over and just thank you for joining us on getting started with Adobe XD. It went by so fast and you guys had so many great questions. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream today. Stick around. There is a lot of great content coming on Behance today. We got stuff on Adobe XD, on Illustrator, on Photoshop. There's stuff every day of the week here. It's really, really great. Again, I'm Jesse Showalter. Hope you guys had a great time today in the stream, and I'll check you guys out later. Have a good one.